Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Jared Yellin with me. Jared is the co-founder of the 10X Incubator, and that's his most recent, but many other businesses before that. We're going to hear some of the stories behind that. But one thing that's really stood out to me about Jared and his story is just how determined he is to accomplish certain aspects of success for he and himself, but for his family, most importantly. So Jared, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, man, thank you. I just want to honor you. I love what you're doing. There is so much just like gems and diamonds and everything that your audience can extract from every one of these interviews, because when somebody's in the middle of a challenge, and many people are, just based on what the world has offered over the past 2 years, all that they can see is the challenge. But once they can get outside of that and they look back, they're like, that was my moment. Like it all made sense. Like I didn't know why I was experiencing it and why I had to suffer. And because of that, I've done this. And I just love you asking people these types of questions so that those that are currently living in an experience someone else has found a way to get out of can then see a route that they can travel. So kudos to you. And listen, I'm an open book. Ask me anything.
I love it. Well, thank you for that. That's a golden nugget right there, folks. 2 minutes in, we already got a golden nugget. So, Jared, for you, a very pivotal decision for many people is, where are we going to go to college, or are we going to go to college? And so you decided to become a Hoosier. So talk a little bit about the decision-making process and how you wound up where you were at.
So when I was in high school, I realized that the classroom wasn't where I wanted to learn. At all. I was really smart. Like I was in all honors classes, but I just like found it so rigid and so confining. And my work ethic was present. I got really into fitness when I was in high school. So like my body was like insane from discipline, because it wasn't just fitness, it was nutrition, it was personal development. I was a top athlete. I was really popular. I just didn't care about the classroom. And I did well, I just didn't care. So when it came down to college, I'm like, what's going to be like the easiest application? Because I'm not going to spend time doing all this stuff. And the Indiana University application was just really easy. And they had a good business school. So that was really my own motivation. I never visited it. I didn't really care to even go to college, but it was something that was encouraged of me. So I committed that when I was going to go, I was going to really make the best of the experience, because obviously it's a ridiculous investment. And I was paying for it myself. And I said, okay, let's use this as an opportunity to see how I could find a way to offset the cost of college and maybe even make some money in the process. So I committed to Indiana because it was the easiest application. And then I was happy I was there, though. It's a great business school, really wonderful alumni network. And that's when I really got into fitness and nutrition. I became a natural bodybuilder that just never competed, because I wasn't doing it to compete against anyone other than myself. So I used to go to the gym in a sweatshirt and sweatpants every day, and no one had any idea like what my body looked like. And I was like a beast. Like I was really strong too. I used to incline bench press over 400 pounds with no spotter. And if I had a spotter, I'd pick the smallest person in the gym, and they would come over, and sometimes it'd be like a little woman, and they'd come over and like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, because I know that you can't help me. So I have to help myself. So it was really intense, completely natural. I didn't even take protein powder. That's how natural I was. What happened was I got a lot of attention because my discipline, my look, like my physical physique. So a lot of my business school professors would ask me questions about like things that they could do in the gym. And they were kind of like weekend warrior types. And I'm like, instead of me just giving them free advice, why don't I use this as a mechanism to just pay my way through college? So I started a personal training business to train my business school professors for two reasons. One, I'm like, I'm going to pay my way through college doing this. And two, I'm never going to go to class again, because I'm going to have my professors in the gym with me, and I have leverage over them. Because if they make me go to class, I guarantee you I have the last laugh, because I'm going to work them to the bone. And that was our agreement. It was like, you're going to pay me and you're not going to go to class. And literally that's what I did. And it wasn't lazy. I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, like training the professors. In between training, I was training myself, doing a ton of personal development, having like big ambitious outcomes as an entrepreneur, like writing down ideas, executing on ideas. So it wasn't like lazy. Like I didn't play video games. Like I didn't do any of that stuff. Like I was immersed in gaining the edge. What was really cool is I paid my way through college. And I met a lot of professors that did previous things that were like really cool. And then from there, what happened was it was time to decide on what I wanted to do next. I graduated early just because I had to get out of the classroom. I'm like, I am done. Like I am like itchy. Like this is just like too much for me. And I got an offer to do this outsourced sales gig. And it sounded cool. But then a fellow graduate who I never knew reached out to me, and he said, I was asking the business school for who was going to be graduating that had some sales experience. And I did door-to-door sales one summer, and they said you, because I kind of was like known mainly because of my physique. Like I was big and I was training all the professors. And they said you, like you're disciplined, you can sell. I don't even know why they knew that about me, but can we meet? And I met this guy's name was Darren Nix. And Darren, when he graduated from IU, he went and worked at McKinsey Consulting. Really, really smart guy. Yeah. And he was part of this group at McKinsey, and his partner said to him, Darren, you're an entrepreneur. Like you're never going to stay here. So instead of us just like losing you, we're going to invest in you. And we have this vision of disrupting the reverse mortgage industry. And at the time, that was like a really hot product because the baby boomers were coming of age. They were house rich and cash poor. So like they paid off their house because of what they were told to do. They had literally no cash to live off of. Yeah. And the reverse mortgage was a great product because they could live off the equity in their home. And it wasn't a line of credit, like, and the way it works, the bank just like owns your home in the end. And then anything that's left over, they give your heirs. So it was a really good product at that time. So they said to him, we're going to give you $500,000 of pre-seed investment. You're going to find a way to make the reverse mortgage process more streamlined because it was a really clunky process. And their thesis was, it doesn't need to be clunky. It can be all online. We just have to prove it because it's going to be the child doing it for the parent anyway. And they're going to rather do it online versus like this clunky process of faxing and paperwork and all these things. So Darren was an engineer by background, and he knew how to build out platforms that could streamline things, but he couldn't sell anything. And he tried actually to start like selling reverse mortgages. And one day, one person said no, and it made him so sad that he went home, laid under the covers, and ate a Reese's Pieces under the blanket. He was like so depressed about hearing no because that just wasn't his personality. So the investors were like, all right, he definitely can build a platform, but he definitely can't sell this platform. Right. Go find somebody that can. So he found me, and we met, and we really hit it off. Like he was like the perfect counterpart for me because you could not get more extreme with our skill sets. So I joined him, and I became a co-founder of this company called Silver Financial. And we had a closet in downtown Chicago. Like it was so small, it was unreal. Like my back touched his back, but it was like how like those like humble beginnings. And the two of us did it. Like we freaking did it. Like we structured a deal with this one bank so they could start like underwriting the loans. We were more of like a marketing service initially, just to try to get people that wanted to reverse mortgages to this bank that would then take the loan. We then went through the process to be able to like originate our own loans. And then we built out the team, and I ended up selling my equity probably earlier than I should have, just because I wasn't really passionate about it. But it was really fun, like to go from like my back touching Darren's back to like the entire floor and dozens of people. So I sold out pretty early. I was young. I mean, it was good cash, and Darren then sold later on as well. So but that was when I knew I could really do it. Like I did door-to-door sales the summer before. I became the #1 sales rep in the country selling merchant processing to small business owners, credit card processing. When I realized I could sell, I realized I could do anything. I had like the physical look, so I got a lot of attention because of it. And then I'm like, I'm gonna freaking do something crazy. So I was 20 years old, graduated, went to Chicago, and we killed it. It was such a cool experience.
Yeah. So I want to highlight that in your story is just that experience with sales and the confidence it gave you to really try anything, right? Hey, even though I've never been in this industry before, I now know I can do this. I can connect with people. So talk a little bit about, having confidence and being able to present yourself in a confident way and how that can open up doors, even if you've never been a part of an industry before.
Yeah. So one of the things that I encourage for maybe some of your audiences, they feel like it's too late to go backwards, but for your kids, everybody should do door-to-door sales. Like everybody should just do that for a summer. Like I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, they will absolutely do door-to-door sales at some point in their life because it's maybe the hardest thing in the world. Like everybody knows you're coming. Like there's no way to hide it. Like you're dressed a little bit too professional. Like you're carrying something. Like they could feel you coming. So it's not like they're like just like, oh look, it's a customer. Like they know that it's the reverse. Like you're going to sell them something. So how do you build rapport really quickly with someone who wants nothing to do with you? Like it's really challenging. So I did this door-to-door sales gig. And the reason I joined was because their advertisement, it said something to the extent of most will fail or something like that. I'm like, really?
Challenge accepted.
Bring it on. Like I'm Mr. 400-pound incline. I don't fail. Like I'm going to freaking do this. So I joined the company and they told me you have to see 100 doors a day to get one sale. Like that was the law of averages. And I didn't have one day of sales experience at this point. And they just throw you in the trenches because like it's all commission based. Like they don't care. And I was in Coney Island in Brooklyn, which is like a really not safe area, other than where the Nathan's hot dogs is. Besides like one street, like it's like you don't go there. Like it is really not a good place. And that was my territory, and it was far. I was on the subway for like 90 minutes each way. That's a trip. Yeah. So that was where I was, and I'm going door to door, and they told me 100 businesses. So Mr. Competitive here is like I'm seeing 125 minimum, and I'm wearing like a suit and tie, carrying a briefcase. And that first day, I mean, physical pushes like out of the businesses, like get out of here. Like I had a donut. And I'm like, whoa, like what just happened? Like that doesn't happen to me. So I'm like, the next day I'm going to see more than 125. It must just be I didn't see enough doors. That just means what it is. So I pushed myself, saw a few extra doors on the 125, still had no sales. I went the whole week and I got no sales. I think I saw like 780 businesses, some crazy number. Like, I mean, every one of my suits I sweat through, like, and I felt so demoralized. I'll never forget the feeling that weekend. I'm like, I don't have what it takes. Like there's just, I can't do this. Like, this was like the first thing in my life that I really struggled with. Like, I could not figure it out. And I was thinking to myself, like, what about this? Wasn't even like I wasn't getting the results. It didn't feel good. Like there was like nothing about the experience of meeting these businesses, churning through them that felt good. And I was thinking to myself, I want to build rapport with them. I want to build a relationship with them. Like I want to help them. Like I want to learn more about them. I don't want to just go in and say my pitch and then get kicked out. So I went in on Monday and I went to like the head of the office and I said, what do you care more about, the 100 doors or the one sale? And they said, we know where you're going with this. Others have tried, they have failed. Just see the 100 doors. I'm like, no, answer my question. What do you care about more, the 100 doors or the one sale? And they're like, Jared, obviously the one sale. I'm like, cool. So you're telling me all I need to do is come back with one sale and you'll be happy. Is that fair to say? And they're like, yes, come back with one sale. I'm like, awesome. So I'm like, I'm going to see 10 businesses. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to see 10 businesses. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to genuinely listen. And I'm going to help them get what they want faster. And in the process, if they can help me, then I'm going to sell them something. If they can't, then I'm not going to. Like, if they're better off with me than without me, it's my moral obligation to get them to say yes. So that's what I did. And I saw 10 businesses and I got 4 sales that day. And no one got 4 sales in a day. Like that was like unheard of. It's 400 doors. You can't do it. So I went back to the office and there's like this gong that you hit when you get sales. And these weren't just like 4 sales. These were like 4 full boats. Like they did everything with me. So I think I made like $1,200, which felt like 12 million. Like it was a big freaking deal. And I go back and I rock the gong 4 times. And I'm telling you, people were shocked. Like no one ever did it before. And they're like, how do you do it? And the head of the office, like, come here. And they pulled me into the back room. Like, did you just see 10 doors? And I'm like, yeah, like you can't tell people that because like what you're doing is not replicatable. I'm like, no, what I am doing is you just have to teach people to genuinely care, like just genuinely care and not just focus on their outcome, but focus on supporting whomever they're selling to help them get what they want faster. And if they're better off with me than without me, they're going to always say yes. So I wasn't able to tell anybody what I did, but I literally became the only person in the country just doing it my way, genuinely listening, asking questions, and I dominated. And once I saw that I could do that, it was like a new level of confidence, like a new level of certainty. I'm like, if I can use my words and I can influence people to take action, and I just make an agreement with myself that I'll only do it with an integrity. Like I'll only do it when I know they're better off with me than without me. I'm unstoppable. Like, cause I don't need anything then. Like I am resourceful. Like I don't need resources. I have that power. And then I literally saw it as a superhuman power. And that is literally what got me to where I am today, is the fact that I just know how to influence people. I know how to sell people when they're better off with me than without me.
I love that. That's so good. And yeah, I think, like you said, hey, if I focus on what's best for you, inevitably people see that, they understand that, they will do work with me. So as you're progressing through, you've got that experience, you've got your first job out of college, and then you decide that maybe I have an idea and I can create my own company. And there's a couple expensive lessons that are learned here. So talk a little bit about starting up that company and kind of the progression through that.
So there was one thing that happened. So when I sold the reverse mortgage company, I I thought I was like 21 years old. I actually had quite a bit of money for anyone, let alone a 21-year-old. And I'm like, I probably should just try this corporate thing. Like if I'm ever going to do it, I probably should just give this a go. So, and I was living in Chicago and I wanted to move back to the East Coast where my family was. So I'm like, I'll just work on Wall Street. And just so you know, I literally knew nothing. I didn't know what a stock was. I didn't know what a bond was. I knew nothing. I wasn't interested in learning about it. But I'm like, let me deploy my salesmanship to see if I can raise money. So I got hired by Merrill Lynch, and I was part of this investment team that was managing billions of dollars, like kind of like endowment money. And they wanted like a young hustler that they could start sending out to events around Manhattan, like really crazy events, like events with celebrities and athletes and people in the fashion industry. And so that's where I was going. Like I was going to like the who's who events. And I brought in some of the craziest meetings to this team, like meetings they were never going to get on their own because they were kind of like old and not that interesting. I'm like 22. I had an exit. Like I could sell and influence, and I was fearless because I knew that I could. So like I was pulling people into the office, and probably about, I don't know, maybe 5 months in, my like mentor, who was the one that actually would invest the money because I didn't know anything at the time, said to me, Jared, you look really young. I'm like, well, 21, 22. Like, yeah, of course I look young. And he goes, yeah, but I have a recommendation for you. If you comb your hair this way, it'll add about 10 years. I'm like, you know what, bro? I'm not coming in tomorrow. Like, this is not. And that was literally, it didn't show up the next day. I was completely done. And I realized I'm just unemployable. Like I just have to do my own thing. And I had a good run after that. I launched a few other companies. I was consulting with a few gigs. But then about 11 years ago now, I had this vision. I had this vision and I launched a company called Synduit. And the vision for Synduit was to democratize the marketing agency. And the reason why this mattered to me was I was looking at all these small business owners, especially my stepfather. My stepfather at that time was a 58, 59-year-old chiropractor, a great office for his lifestyle, but it was like him and one staff person. They were kind of at capacity at all times. And he couldn't justify hiring a marketing agency. Like he couldn't, like, even though he could afford it, he couldn't justify spending $5,000 to $7,000 to $10,000 a month because they'd have to produce a lot for him to justify it. And he couldn't even handle the inflow. Right. But he really wanted to market. Like he had a message that mattered to him, but he wasn't going to pay that price. And he definitely wasn't going to do it himself. And I thought to myself, if I can make an agency under $50 a month and I could help my stepfather, I could have 1 million businesses and I could change the world. So that was like this thing that I saw was like, I'm going to democratize the marketing agency. And what I realized, what I actually meant was I'm going to build the simplest marketing software in the world. And I'm going to pre-populate the software with agency quality content across every major industry and then sell it as a subscription to small business owners. And in my mind, Phil, I'm like, this is brilliant. Like this is it. But I didn't know where to start. I had the money to do it, but I felt really irresponsible to throw cash at a concept because I'm a non-tech. Like I know how to write marketing copy and I know how to sell. I didn't even know where to go with this. And this wasn't like today where there's at least like no code solutions. Like there was like none of that back then. So I'm like, I'm just going to start the process. I'm going to sell myself as a copywriter to like buy a little bit of time. So that's what I did. I sold myself to 2 pretty high profile thought leaders. We did a performance deal where I would earn 30% of any revenue that I produced for them. It's like all new business. And I killed it for them. I think I made like $7.5 million for them in 6 months. It was like crazy. So obviously I did well financially, but more than the money, they just told everybody about me. And within 14 months, I literally built the opposite of what I desired. I built a marketing agency for thought leaders, and we had like 400 clients. Like it was like a big agency really quick, like big team, big office, big team. It was very cash flow positive. But for me, it was a means to an end. Like I wanted to democratize the agency. But if you like, your questions are like, what were those milestone moments in your life? And you look back and you're like, well, that had to happen before this. Like that had to happen before I could actually build Synduit because I was able to like understand what an agency actually did because I didn't really know until I did it. And then I'm like, okay, eliminate, automate, duplicate, replicate, let's do this. And in 2011, I had clarity. I had clarity of what I ultimately had to build to democratize the agency. So I began interviewing different software development firms all throughout the US that were like really reputable firms. And I hired one out of Boston that had a very strong reputation. And they said that they could do it and it would take 10 months and $750,000 to build the first version of this product, of the simplest marketing software in the world that was pre-populated with content for every major industry. So I'm like, let's do it. Like I went all in. I funded it myself. I was probably about 26 years old, 27 years old. I was writing a $60,000 to $100,000 check every month for those 10 months. And at the end of 10 months, it was my moment. At the time I was in a relationship. Now my wife, Lindsay, I remember that morning, I'm like, this is it. Like, this is it. This is the moment. And I went to the D day, the demo day. So I went to their office in Boston and I walk in, they greet me and like, do you want any coffee or tea? I'm like, no, I just want to see what you did. Like, I can't wait any longer. So I sit down and they're like, Jared, we have some good news for you. And I'm like, what? Like, you have some good news? Like, what do you mean you have some good news? Like, I'll start with the some good news, because I'm sure there's some bad news too. There's only some good news. So the some good news, they did a demo and they're like, well, that's the some good news. I'm like, well, it looks great, but like, where's everything else? I mean, I think that's like maybe 20% of what I told you we needed. They're like, yeah, that's why it's just some good news. I'm like, well, what's the some bad news? And they said, we just miscalculated what it was going to take. And I'm like, all right, to what degree? And they said, we need at least another 18 months and $1.5 million. I'm like, what? Like, and at that moment, I became a statistic, because this is the kind of stuff that happens to the non-tech founder. This might be more extreme than most cases, but this is just what happens. And it was so interesting in that moment. Another one of those moments you look back and you're like, wow, everything makes sense. I should have been mad or I should have been sad, but I was neither. I'm like, this is happening for me right now. Like, I know it. I felt this calling. And the calling was, in my life as an entrepreneur, I'm going to make the technology industry safe. I mean, that's what I had no idea what I meant by it, other than this didn't feel safe to me. And I know other people had very similar stories, and they didn't feel safe. They felt taken advantage of. They felt like abused almost. The second thing that happened was I met somebody. So there was this one person on my team. We had 35 engineers at that time, just so you know, Phil. But one of them was this gentleman named Mani. And before Mani worked with me, there's another one of those moments for you. He lived in India. And when he was in India, he started his own software development firm out of his parents' 150 square foot apartment, like this little apartment that like 7 people lived in, really tight. Wow. And 3 years later, he had 100 employees. So outside of being a great engineer and architect, he's really a good manager and mentor, a great manager and mentor as well. He sold that company at the end of 2011 to move to the US in 2012 because he wanted to start a family here with his wife. And when he moved to the US, he was living on the end of my street where my original office was in Englewood, New Jersey. Now, he could have been anywhere but there, and we never would have met. We wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Yes.
Because when he arrived, he had no money, he had no bike, and he had no car. So he had to walk to work. And his apartment building was here, and my office building was here. And in between us was this little coffee shop that I never went to before. And one morning, I'm like, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. So I go in to get some coffee, and I don't talk to people like small talk. That's not what I do. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I don't get coffee and I don't small talk. And I started talking to Mani, who was online buying a cup of coffee. And we just like hit it off. Like, it was just like this magical connection, like a soulmate in business. And I'm like, what are you working on now? He's like, no, I literally just got here 48 hours ago. I'm like, really? I'm like, well, I'd love for you to join. So I call up the Boston firm when I'm in this little coffee shop. I'm like, I found my guy. I need you to hire him because of visa purposes, and then just put him in my office so he can work with me every day. So that's what they did. And it was a magical experience. We really got to connect. In 2014, I ended my relationship with that vendor because it just wasn't working. And I said to Mani, stay with me and be my CTO. And let's really do this thing right. And he said, Jared, that would be my dream. So he joined me, and it gave me a chance to build our own dev team, our own software development team. We hired in the US, we hired in Canada, and we also hired in India as well. And when you're in tech, if you could figure out India, I mean, you're set. It's just really hard to figure it out unless you have Mani, who's hiring his friends and his family. So it was an amazing situation. The only downside was we were hiring contractors, and it's hard to retain contractors anywhere, but it's almost impossible in India because contractor income is not recognized by banks. So as a result, they can't get personal loans for anything, houses or cars or like anything. So eventually they're going to quit. So I wanted to solve their quality of life challenge and my retention challenge. The only way to do that was to set up a company in India, which is what we did. It took us like a year and a half to do it. We set it up in 2017. I hired these 12 people, and I realized that was a ton of effort to hire 12 people. Let's start using this as a recruiting tool. So we did, in about 45 days, we doubled the team with about 25 people on the software development side. Yeah. And that was my catalyst for Synduit. So today, just a few years later, Synduit has well over 40,000 active paying users on the platform across 30 industries. We did it. We democratized the agency. It's under $50 a month. It's a great business. But the magic for me, and why we're even having this conversation, is what happened in April of 2020. I woke up one day and I realized I'm officially obsolete.
Yep.
Which should be every entrepreneur's dream. So I was really happy about this. So I ended up calling a meeting with my top 4 people at Cinduit that have been with me pretty much since the beginning. And they jumped on Zoom like this. And I was holding up 4 stock certificates when they got on. And they're like, what is that? What is that? And they saw, I'm like, oh my gosh, what does it take to get those? I'm like, that's the wrong question. I've already issued them to you. The real question is, what does it take to keep them? And what it takes to keep them is to really keep me obsolete. And they do. I might spend 10 minutes a month at this point on the company. Like they run the entire company. So for the first time in a decade, I had a completely clean canvas. I was 35 years old, 2 young kids, happily married. We have a great life because of Cinduit. And I started thinking to myself, what's next? They have so much energy, so much time, like what's next? And I went back to that moment where I committed to making the technology industry safe. And I started thinking to myself, I want to do what I just did with Cinduit, but 10,000 more times by 2031. And I don't know why it was 10,000 because that's a ridiculous number. But the one thing I learned in life is you can't negotiate against your moonshot. You can't do it.
Yeah.
To me, this was my moonshot moment. This was the moment where I was going to do something that would shake up the world, where I was going to go down trying. So I got my phone and I called up Monty, who was still my CTO at Cinduit. And I called up a woman named Katie, who was my director of operations at Cinduit. And I said, I have an idea. I'm going to do it with or without both of you, but I can't imagine not doing it with you. To build, scale, and sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. Are you in? And their exact words were, we are in because it's you. We have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, all right, let me explain. We're going to launch a tech incubator, but this is not going to be like every other incubator or accelerator where we invest a little bit of money and then offer mentorship in a classroom for 3 to 6 months. That's cool. That's just not this. What this is a place for people to come with their tech ideas that they've written on a piece of paper or like a napkin like this, or a minimum viable tech product they put a little bit of money into, or even a cash flowing tech company that just plateaued and they really want to accelerate, and they could pitch us. And when they pitch us, there's 4 things that we're going to look for: the right person with the right idea in the right market and the right business model. When all 4 of those things are present, we will co-found a company with that person. We'll both take equity in the company, so our values are just perfectly aligned. And then we build the entire company at cost: software development, go-to-market, sales, customer support, legal, fundraising, financing, like everything it takes to build, scale, and sell the company. And about 99% of the initial cost for the minimum viable product is at cost in India in a company that I've owned since 2017. So the risk is low and the cost is low. So in June of 2020, we opened our portfolio. And since then, Phil, we've had over 14,000 people submit their tech ideas. So heavy influx of ideas. Of that, about 600 of them earned the chance to pitch us. So they did a written application and then had a chance to pitch us, kind of like a Shark Tank. And then we've said yes to 126 companies. 120 companies in our first year, which is actually more remarkable than 10,000 in 10 years, because it was the year to figure it out. Like, how do you do this? Like how do you do bookkeeping across 126? How do you build out the product team and the go-to-market team and the dev team in India? Like, this is our year to figure it out, and we have. And now that it's open, like we can scale this thing immensely. But what's so important that everybody hears in all of this is we're not playing a law of averages. It's not like we launch like enough companies, we're gonna have 1 or 2 winners. Like everything we say yes to, we see a path to build, scale, and sell. My certainty comes from 2 things. One, our criteria is very tight. Like we don't say yes unless we know we can do that. And the second thing is we're really vertically integrated. So we launched our own angel investor network. We have our own crowdfunding platform to pre-validate ideas. We're doing some cool stuff with the blockchain right now, selling perpetual use license for tech companies. And we're about to set up a really cool fund. It's a Reg A fund because we want to give everyone a chance to invest, so accredited and non-accredited. So it's really cool. But here's the ultimate lesson for everybody. This is a great opportunity for all of you. And this is what I would write down if I was you. I learned how to get attention, how to keep attention. And there's 3 things that I did. I didn't know I was doing this at the time, but now that I look back, this is what I did. The first is I declared my moonshot: build, scale, sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. The second thing I did is what I took maniac action. And what that means is anyone that's watching, they think you're a combination of crazy and onto something because you're doing so much so quickly. They're like, they don't even know how to process it. And the third thing I did was I talk about what I'm doing a ton, like incessantly. And as a result, I have a ton of attention. I mean, from everywhere, from Silicon Valley to athletes and celebrities to big tech companies. I mean, like everywhere. One of the people I got the attention of is a gentleman named Grant Cardone, who I'm sure most of your audience is familiar with. If they're not, Grant runs a $4 billion real estate fund. He's crowdfunded $1 billion of it through different means, really cool stuff. He was also a star on the TV show Undercover Billionaire, where they took 4 billionaires and they dropped them at random locations around the US. He was in Pueblo, Colorado, and they stripped you of everything. Your Rolodex, your wallet, your identity, like everything.
Yep.
They gave you $100 and they said, you have 90 days to turn the $100 into $1 million. Go for it. And the other 3 people just burned out. They couldn't take it. And Grant didn't. He turned it into $5.5 million over 90 days. He's probably the greatest showman of the past decade. His social media following is over 15 million people, email list of nearly 5 million people. And he heard about me. And he's like, this dude is crazy or he's onto something, but I got to meet him. And he invited me out to his office probably about 7 months ago from the time of this session here. And I didn't know him personally at all. Like I knew what he did. It's really impressive. But it was interesting when I look back at like going into that meeting, I wasn't looking to do a deal. It was actually not even on my radar. I was just excited to meet him, but not the Grant that everybody else knew. Like I always see pictures of him and his young daughters and they have a twinkle in their eye. And I know that like no child has a twinkle in their eye looking at their dad unless their dad earned it. So I'm really excited to see why he has the twinkle. And I see him and his wife, Elena, they have like a really publicly supportive dynamic. And I'm like, I want to see that. And then I know a few people that have either done something with him in the past or they currently work at his company. And they're like, he's changed my life. Like the guy's just changed my life. So that was what I was looking to see. And that's what I met. And we just hit it off, Phil. Like we spoke for probably about 4 hours that first day. And our values were aligned. Our desire to create an even playing field was aligned. And about an hour into the meeting, he said to me, Jared, that chair you're sitting in right there, my sales team sells that chair for $100,000 an hour. And when people pay that fee, I put the money in my foundation. He has a foundation to help children that don't have a dad, because he didn't have a dad growing up. And there's a lot of And then they come out to my office. And when they come out, it's their hour. We can eat lunch together. They can pitch me. They can ask me for advice. It's whatever they want in their hour. And what I know to be true is you didn't spend $100,000 to sit in this chair with me because I invited you here. And you're not asking me for anything. Like you're not pitching me, like you're not asking me for advice, but I have something to ask you. And he stood up. So I stood up too, just like socially appropriate. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, I want to co-author the story with you. I want to invest in this. I want to help you build, scale, and sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. And he put his hand out. And I shook his hand on the spot. And the reason I did it, remember, I wasn't coming in to do a deal. Right. Is that what we've done from an infrastructure perspective to take this and turn it into a tech company, it's never been done before, like ever. And I'm not saying this like to toot my own horn. It has never been done before. It's just so difficult to make that happen. And what Grant's done from like an ecosystem perspective, an audience perspective, is just so unique, like the loyalty of his following. And when you bring that together, it's called massive disruption. So what we're standing to do and doing is to democratize technology. Because right now, the vast majority of tech, it resides in Silicon Valley, in California, which is the most pretentious place in our country. If you don't have the right pedigree, right ethnicity, right age, right, you can't even buy a cup of coffee there. And we just stand against it. We have a founder in a little village in New Zealand. We have more women than men. We have every ethnicity represented. We just create an even playing field. Because what we don't care about is where someone's been or where they are. What we care about is where they want to go. And when the right person shows up with the right idea in the right market and the right business model, we give them a shot. And that's what we're up to. And it's the most rewarding thing I've done as an entrepreneur. Everything about this journey, when I look back at all of those dark moments, like that demo day was a dark moment. Like I had to have that experience to be able to now do what I'm doing to prevent that from happening to anyone that we're able to support. And I owe it all those milestone moments in my life.
I love that. So a couple of things that I want to just, pick through as you went through that. One of them was the 3 things that somebody needs to do. And one of them was, you said, shoot for the moon, right? But believe in it and have the confidence in it. And then third, tell everybody about it. Now, I think for a lot of people, they can have the goal of shooting for the moon, but the second they tell someone about it, and that person is someone they respect, doesn't agree with them or doesn't think it's possible, that can bring doubt into their mind. And all of a sudden they don't continue to act upon it. So for you, what's one thing that continues to push you, even when people say, Jared, you're crazy. But then second, what would be your encouragement to somebody that has a crazy idea, but they're hearing negative insight from people that they respect or that are in their circle?
So besides for Monty and Katie, no one said it was a good idea. Like no one, like everybody was like, "What are you doing? Like what do you like? This is ridiculous, right, Jared?" Like, so there was no one. So there's a few things. So one is I never ever listen to anyone that shares their opinion if they don't have what I desire for my life, because most of the time, if not all the time, the naysayers, like they're not where you're going. Like they're way beneath you and they're just trying to pull you down. So I never even entertain it. Like it's as if like I can't hear them. The second thing is I know that every naysayer, including people that you might go to bed with at night, including people that you might deem as family, your friends, behind every naysayer is 10,000 raving fans. The problem is that people focus on the naysayer, so they don't see the 10,000 raving fans. The other thing is this. I know that this moonshot will happen. Like there's not even a question in my mind. So my certainty is just absolutely undeniable. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean I don't wake up with doubt, but have lunch with doubt and have dinner with doubt and go to bed with doubt. Like I'm a human being. I still have those moments. The doubt just never wins. But here's what I also know. This is like such a critical lesson for anyone out there that wants to do something like really significant. On your quest to impact billions of lives, you're going to ruffle thousands of feathers. And what most people worry about is not ruffling thousands of feathers. And as a result, they don't impact billions of lives. I know I'm going to ruffle. I already have ruffled feathers. We've hired people and fired them the next day because we didn't know until they were here that they weren't right. So that ruffled the feather. They're like, what do you mean? Like, I've been here for a day. I'm like, yeah, but I know you're not right. Like, you're a value misfit. We didn't know. We answered every question right. Like, but you're just not right. Like, we've had co-founders that we've had to unfortunately let go. Like, we've had strategic alliances that I've had hard conversations with that probably despise me right now. And I'm perfectly okay with it. My intent is always right. I'm only here to produce the outcome, and that outcome will impact billions of lives, like if not even every person on the planet. And in the process, I guarantee you, I will ruffle a few thousand feathers, not intentionally, just as a consequence of going after big, bold, and audacious. So for you, just be okay with that and stop worrying about the feathers you ruffled. Stop worrying about the naysayer and focus on whatever your impact is, and know that every critic, behind the critic, literally right past them, is a straight line of 10,000 raving fans. You just can't see them unless you move the critic aside. And then you're like, oh my goodness, you're all here supporting me. And that's just what I've learned over the years.
That's so good. Everybody, you're going to want to rewind that and listen to the last minute of that. That's good. Now, a second thing that you brought up was, yes, this opportunity and connection with Grant. And once again, to your point, if you don't know who he is, quick Google him, you'll find out very quickly who he is. But it would only be possible to get attention of somebody like Grant with two things. One, a moonshot idea. He doesn't do small things. So a moonshot idea. And secondly, a connection. And so there was a gentleman that had a little bit of a connection for you that got a foot in the door. And then you, with your idea and just, big ideas, were able to close a deal that you didn't know you were there to close. So talk a little bit about just, the power of connections and, your social circle and what that can do for people.
So the president of Grant's company is also named Jared. He's become like a dear friend of mine. And we were talking a couple months ago about how to integrate me / 10X Incubator into some of their events, because they host like 85 events a year. And I was like, let me teach the power of a moonshot. And he's like, oh yeah, that's inspiring. We should do that right after lunch because people are tired. You can then inspire them. I'm like, listen, bro, it is inspiring, but it is the single greatest magnet of opportunity that's ever existed in the space of marketing, like ever. So much so that I have billionaires that dream about me. And I know that they do because of the power of the moonshot. And it's not just about inspiration. So understanding what that is for you is critical, and be able to communicate it in a way that other people can remember it. It's not a mission statement. It's an outcome that you're causing.
Yes.
And that's a really profound concept. So because of this, I have a lot of people that quote unquote like dream about me. And I'm not saying this from an ego perspective. Yes. I just know that they do, because I'm causing and creating a future for them. So one of them is a gentleman named Mike C-Rock, who's a dear friend of mine. Yes. He's one of our co-founders ×2. So he has 2 companies with us in the portfolio, and he's in the trenches with us, seeing what we're doing and seeing how positively disruptive it is. And he's also someone that has invested a lot of money with Grant Cardone, like high 6 figures, and it's benefited him immensely. And he's someone that just stands to make synergistic connections, like 1 + 1 = way more than 2. He doesn't know how much, but like way more than 2. Yeah. So he introduced the concept of me to Jared Glant. And Jared Glant's like, I love to meet him. And I was living in Florida. So I spoke with Jared Glant first, and we just kind of hit it off. He's my age. His kids are the same age as my kids. Like, we kind of just like hit it off. And he's like, what are you doing? And I shared the moonshot. He's like, bro, you're freaking crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm onto something. He goes, no, I know that too. He's like, Grant would love this. And I'm like, listen, I'm happy to talk with Grant. There's zero pressure, but I want you to tell him this. I know what matters to him. And what matters to him is he wants 8 billion people to know his name. Is that right? He goes, yeah, that's what we're all committed to doing here. And it's not an ego thing for Grant. It's that when they know his name, they know 10X. And when they know 10X their life, 10X's. So that's what he wants. And I'm like, all right, do you believe right now, Jared, that he has vehicles to get to 8 billion? And be honest with me. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you think that his sales training can be sold to 8 billion people? He goes, no. I'm like, all right. Do you think his real estate fund can be available for 8 billion people? He's like, no. I'm like, so how do you see him having 8 billion people know his name? He goes, we'll figure it out. I'm like, I know you will, right? Like, commit and figure it out later. But what if I had a way that Grant could have his outcome, his vision, his moonshot become his reality shot?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. I'm like, if he were to support in building, scaling, and selling 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years, 8 billion people would know his name. He's like, dude, that's really going to excite him. I'm like, listen, I don't even know what I have no idea. All I'm saying is if that's what matters to him, then tell him you met somebody that can make that happen faster. So he did. And Grant's like, the dude's crazy or he's onto something, but right into my office. But there's another lesson in all of this, because listen, everybody wants Grant's attention. Like, now that we spoke on, like, this is his wall. He's on the other side of this wall here. Like, he's literally right there. So I see like the deal flow and the people trying to get his attention. I mean, it's crazy stuff. And the reason why he asked me to partner, and I emphasize this, he asked me to partner, not me coming to beg him to partner. He's like, I want to do this with you. It's because I had leverage. And leverage is a really powerful thing. And when used the right way, it produces outcomes. So the leverage was this. I was doing this with or without Grant. Build, scale, sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. But he couldn't do it without me. Like, he couldn't do it. Like, there was no way that he could recreate what I already had. Like, it's out of his singularity. Like, it's out of his skill set. Like, he never woke up for one day in his life thinking that he was going to launch a tech incubator that was going to build, scale, and sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. Never, ever. Didn't even cross his mind. So when I came with leverage and certainty and infrastructure, and I'm undeniable with my certainty, he's like, I don't want to miss out on this thing. He's like, this is going to happen with her. So it's leverage. And some might say, that's crazy. You leverage over Grant. I did. And I knew that I did. And I knew that because I did, if he was better off with me than without me, it was my responsibility to get him to say yes. Yeah. And that's where we started this conversation, because that's what I learned doing door-to-door sales, is that when I went door-to-door to small business owners, selling them merchant processing, if they were better off with me than without me, it was my responsibility to get them to say yes. It wasn't their responsibility to say yes. It was my responsibility to get them to say yes. And that's what transpired with Grant.
That's so good. That is so good. So the last thing, Jared, that I want to make sure we highlight in your story is, and you said it, sometimes even the person that you go to bed with is not in agreement with this. So your spouse has been on the journey through all of these things. You mentioned, hey, even with the original investment of the coding, that morning I said, hey, I'm super excited. It's the day, babe. And then today, you guys now live in Florida. You moved across the country to be there. So talk a little bit about just having that supportive person. And I want to make sure that I highlight supportive doesn't always mean agreeance, right? But they've got your back. So talk just a little bit about, what that's meant for you and how you've been able to get to where you're at with that support.
Yeah, so I come from a divorced household. So my parents got divorced when I was very young. It was the single most pivotal moment of my life, was their divorce when I was young. It really set me on a path to have what I have now, was that moment. Yeah. And I knew that the only way, because I always, like, when I was younger, I used to think I was like the greatest catch ever, like, and not like a cocky way, but I'm like, I got I have a good head on my shoulders. I was successful early. Like, I was in great shape. I'm like, I'm the greatest catch ever, until I met this one woman and she told me what she was looking for in a partner. I'm like, I can't be that guy. Like, I can't just sit there and watch TV at night with you. I won't be that guy. I'm like, wow, I'm really not. And I then started to joke, which was, I'm the easiest person to be with, and the same time I'm the most difficult person. And I'm just nuts. Like, I'm nuts. Like, I am very grounded. I am a dad before anything else. I never miss dinner or putting my kids to bed ever, like ever. At 5 o'clock every day, my phone goes in another room and I'm with them till 8 o'clock or until they stop negotiating me. So they go to bed. Like I'm a husband, like, and I'm an entrepreneur, but like those other things come first. But I'm a maniac too. Like I just don't stop. Like, and I know that. And what's so important in a relationship is that you're aligned with where you're going. Like that's critical. And then there's certain values that just, for me, have to be present. So our values on how we define freedom in our home, our values on health, our values on adventure. And with Lindsay, we have that. And I can't say it was easy for her because when I met her, it was 2 weeks before I started Synduit. And for just a free piece of advice for anybody that's not in a meaningful relationship yet, don't start a company and a relationship within 2 weeks of each other, because like one of them is going to fail, right? And I had this limiting belief, which was I could either be really successful or have a really successful relationship, but I couldn't have both. And I don't know where that came from. I'm sure something from my parents' divorce, but I believed that when I first met Lindsay. But I had a feeling that she was the one. I pretty much knew she was the one I wanted to be with. And I was doing this Synduit thing that was happening. So I'm like, I'm gonna find a way to break that pattern. And I didn't at all. I actually like went all in on the business because it became really successful really quickly. And I gave the relationship nothing, like no energy, no fuel whatsoever. And probably about 10 months in, we were just still dating. We got engaged like right after this moment. I went into bed one night. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning because that was like my grind of 20 hours a day. And I got into bed and she poked me and she said, I just want to let you know, I feel like I'm an inconvenience in your life. And it was like one of those big moments for me because I could have been mad, like, you know how hard I'm working for you. Or I could have been sad, which is like, oh my gosh, it's the last thing that I want. But I wasn't. I'm like, started to smile. It was like a weird reaction. She couldn't see it because it was dark or she would have got really pissed. But I was like smiling because I'm like, that's a point of demarcation for me. Because my entire life is predicated on my ability to produce more freedom for myself and for my family and for everyone I can touch. And if the person that matters to me most at that time and still doesn't feel that, something's off. And I committed in that moment that I'm going to find a way that I'm willing to sweat. I'm just not willing to bleed as an entrepreneur. And this was a huge turning point for me because I believe for me, I know I like bled my way to success. Like I just like grinded and hustled and outworked and I made it, but I was like a bloody mess when I made it. And I realized like, that's not sustainable. That's not healthy. That's not what I want, but sweat is healthy. Like when you sweat, like you're eliminating toxins, like it's really good for you. It's why you go to the gym every day, like sweat every day. So like, I'm going to sweat. I'll work hard. I'm going to sweat, but I'm not going to bleed. And I started to develop boundaries and cadences and we aligned on our values and that was it. And now as a result, as much as I make every, like when somebody's in a relationship with me, like I make everything easy and impossible at the same time. Like, but for Lindsay, that's not the case. And we're just aligned and we're aligned because we know where we're going and we sync up often. And when we're out of sync, we sync up again and we just over communicate. And that's what's allowed the relationship to work, me as a dad to work, and this wild moonshot to work. And I would give up the moonshot in 1 second if any of those other aspects were not in place, because that's really all that matters to me. But because they are in place, it gives me the foundation to go after the moonshot as well.
I love it. Well, Jared, I want to say thank you for sharing your story, man, and just all the pivotal moments that have led you to where you're at. The beauty of this is that you and I will have to record one of these probably every 6 months, at least once a year, just as all the businesses grow. And I can't wait for you to accomplish your goal with the 10,000 businesses that'll be coming over the next decade. But thank you again so much for being on.
Yeah, awesome. Listen, thank you. I love what you're doing in this world, and I'm always available. And anyone in your audience, you have a napkin, I'd love to support you. So head over to 10xincubator.com. It's free. Just submit your idea. Take yourself serious enough to submit it, though. Like, take yourself serious enough to realize, like, that idea is on a napkin, and it's on your napkin for a reason. Every great company started on a napkin. In September, I'm speaking with Richard Branson at an event, and we're going to be on stage together talking about what's on your napkin. Because Virgin started on a napkin, and now look what Virgin is today. You might have Virgin on your napkin. You just got to execute. Can't wait to see what your idea is. And Phil, thank you so much for this friendship. I'm excited so we can co-create over the course of time as well.
Oh man,